Anishana Bedug, Bimadisiduk, Gitanimekuninimsa, Ginawa, Sagajuay Gaboekwe, Dijui Nego, Odishama Kea Gaza Gasquajame, Kagan Dojiba, Odishamaga Masqua, Kukagan, and Anakian. Gichiwasa, Gabijayan, Dibikung, Chinipidagushima, Oma. Nigichimin Wendan Gayego, Oma Chipiayan, and Jikandan, Dipidagushima. Get to go get the Spain in Nimsa, Ginawa, and Gaye, and you gonna win in the egg, and you Niigane Ojibwemowin Immersion School. AP Tendang, me AP Tendang. O Osa, Niigane Ojibwemowin go, O Niigane Ojibwemowin. Idami Gwajianim Ginawa, Ekayego. Ambega Shagona, Wenigo, Gani, Regional Kilia, Go Masa, Jenny Widow Kawandagu, Janishna, Bam, Nanik, Lindaji, and dying. I am Leslie Harper, and I came from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, north central Minnesota. I just got in yesterday, and this is the first time I've been in the area, so thanks to everybody for being kind and helpful and helping me to get here. I am the director of the Niigane Ojibwemowin Immersion School up at Leech Lake. I'm a second language learner. I've learned Ojibwe I've learned to speak Ojibwe as an adult. I've been working for quite a long time to try this out, but I think I put it in my bio in the workshop materials that my son is a first speaker of Ojibwe, and that's something that hasn't happened in our communities for a really long time. And he is something else. Yeah, they broke the mold when they made that one. No, there's about 35 little kids, a little bit younger than he too, who are now Ojibwe speakers at the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. It's been decades since we've heard children's voices speaking our language. We're pretty proud of that, and we're really excited about it, and it just keeps creating more and more work for us. Trying to keep up with their languages. There's something about trying to speak Ojibwe with your friends or with your grandmas and grandpas or with your kids and having a 7-year-old look at you and go, oh, Gawin, and go, Gwaya Kusiduna O. I'm going to tell you the right way to say that. Have a 7-year-old shake their head at you. It's pretty exciting. And it's a lot more fun than having your grandmas shake their heads at you. No, we readily accept that too. We readily accept that as well. We get, at our school, we're about 8 years old in operating our language immersion school. We started with a kindergarten class, and we just took that little cohort and we added a year. We grew a grade per year. And we added a new incoming class as well. So 8 years through, last year we graduated one cohort out. We go kindergarten through 6th grade, and we haven't yet built up our middle school or our high school, and I'll get to some of that in my presentation as well. But just a little background on how we got here and where we're at. I would really love to be following my PowerPoint presentation because I always lose my place and I can get so off track. When I'm talking, I can get so off track because there are so many things that we go over. But we'll get to it. Thank you. Miigwech, Chris. Chris knows what he's doing. Oh, miigwech. Weighing in on our sounds. This is how we talk about things. At our community in Leech Lake, we have, all told in our enrolled membership, we have about 10,000 Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe members. There are about 3,000 to 4,000 who live on or near res in our northern Minnesota area. Otherwise, everybody's geographically dispersed. We also have 6 other neighboring Ojibwe communities in our state, and a lot of us have relatives at each one of those communities. But we have not typically been passing the language on to our kids over the last several decades. And what we started doing at Leech Lake is asking ourselves questions and figuring out the answers. Because somewhere along the line, too many other people started answering questions for us, and they didn't make sense to us. They were not of our community, and they were not of our understandings, and the answers that were coming out were not making sense to us and were not helping us in our community. So always what we do at our community is we frame it in questions. So that means that always we're building ourselves up and we're making sure that we know how to answer our own questions, that we are answering to our needs, because other folks have not been doing that for a long time. So one of the first things we said was, Niigaane Ojibwemowin. Who's going to speak Ojibwe in the future? We don't know. And so here was just a picture of some chairs waiting at the fire, and this is something that our elders tell us about too, that they're waiting for us. There's like one little kid playing in there, and hopefully she's going to have some friends who will come along with her, and some relatives who will come along with her to help her speak Ojibwe. And we talk about, again in our community, we have to talk about why and what's the point and how is this going to come about, how is this going to help us out. So we say, Niigaane Ojibwemowin. And these were some of the basic questions we asked, but they get more and more complex as you go along. We had to start out and just take a survey in our community. How many speakers do we have? How old are they? And we found out that they're in their 70s and 80s, and this is how it's going. So then everybody says, we want to talk Ojibwe, we want to do it, but how do we do it? And I have no magic formulas. It seems really common sense as a practitioner of it. And maybe it's not, but I think this audience understands how we come to be there and is understanding how common sense it is. We have to back up and ask ourselves, well, how did these people come to speak Ojibwe then? They spoke it in the homes. They spoke it in settings that were meaningful and relevant. They spoke it in places like the doctor's office. My grandma was a translator, and there were a lot of people who were her age who were translators at the doctor's office, in the police stations. My grandma was a translator at the doctor's. That's a pretty heavy-duty job right there. Being able to communicate back and forth medical conditions. You get a lot in your hands. But we had to also ask, well, is anybody passing on Ojibwe to the coming generations? Not really sure. Well, how are we going to continue to do that? How are we going to start it up again, and how are we going to continue to do it? And we talk about, because in our community at Leech Lake, I can only talk about this here at home from our experience, and I don't know if this will work completely well in your communities, but hopefully you can take some of this and you can take it back and you can adapt it to how it works for you guys. But for us, we also had to open up the conversations about why talk Ojibwe, and what's the point, because we were told to put it away a long time ago. So we talk about dreams and hopes and wishes, and we talk about intent. Why do we communicate, you know? And these are exactly the things we have to do when we go around in the community with the different generations of folks that we talk about it with the different folks we present to on it. We talk to high school kids about it, we talk to college kids about it, and we talk with some of the elders in our community about it too. And even they're saying, well, why talk Ojibwe? And we have to open up these conversations, which means opening up our hearts, which means opening this up. When we start talking about dreams, when we start talking about wishes, when we start talking about intent, it really opens up something in here. So this is where we start to go. Speaking as an act of negotiation. It's us putting together everything we receive, and it's us reacting to everything we receive. This is a ridiculous slide. It's just a visual. These were actual answers. We went around in the community. Where do you want to hear? The column on the left, where we'd like to hear Ojibwemowin. It's a really long list. Where would we like to hear our language? And you have to get people to be specific. When you're planning, when you're doing a movement, when you're doing any of this, you got to be specific, because it's easy to go, I want to talk Ojibwe. And it's just this big, wide, vague goal, and you're never going to get there, because there's so much. You can so easily get overwhelmed. But when you get specific about it, that's when you can attack different parts of it. So this is what we do in our community. We bug people. We keep asking the questions, and we say, keep getting more and more specific. You have to be so specific. So where do you want to hear Ojibwe? And usually people in our community start out with, I want to hear it everywhere. Okay, everywhere. Where do you go? Where can you speak Ojibwe in our community? And we try to draw people in, and we say, where can you speak Ojibwe in the community? Because then you have to be a part of the movement. You get to be part of it. And people are like, at the doctor, we want to hear it at the tribal council meetings. One girl said, I want to be able to talk Ojibwe to the cops and totally throw them off. We're like, do you get stopped by the cops that often? But it's her goal. So we come up with a list of things you want to learn how to say, and we'll work with you, because she was really motivated by that. Motivation, affect towards learning. It's on our list. This is Leech Lake Community's goals. In my home, and then we say, where in your home do you want to talk Ojibwe? Do you want to talk Ojibwe with your husband? Do you want to talk Ojibwe with your wife? Do you want to talk Ojibwe with your grandma? Do you want to talk Ojibwe with your kids? See, saying, I want to talk Ojibwe in the home, again, is huge. What do you want to talk about in your home? And we always do this elicitation stuff, and we always do this stuff with folks to say, where exactly? What are your goals? That's the only way we're going to see this through, is when you set something that's attainable. So it's this huge long list of where we'd like to hear Ojibwe. And we do all this rah-rah cheerleading, firing up stuff in the community. And then we say, where do you know you can hear Ojibwe in our community? Where can you go for support? That's the list on the right. Ceremonies, our dances and our funerals. Yeah, that's about what we have. We've got a few dances that happen in the summer or in the spring and the fall. And we have funerals year-round. Some classes in the school, and there's a couple of homes. But it's a short list. So we know as a community that we have our work set out for us. And we know that there's never going to be nothing for us to do. Niigaane. Well, what do we know? What do we know that's positive about our Ojibwemowin? We know that our grandmas and grandpas, their wishes and their dreams, this is their language for their dreams. Can you imagine not being able to talk to your grandma and grandpa? Last spring, my uncle had a stroke, and when he came to, his English was gone. He had only Ojibwemowin left, and his family didn't know what he was saying. His wife could understand some of it, but his kids didn't know what he was saying. A couple of his grandkids could understand a little bit, but to his motor skills, his muscles, and his mouth were hard, so he was slurring a lot too. And they called in a few of us younger folks and said, can you come in and translate? And that was terrifying as well, to think, what's Uncle saying to his kids? Am I getting this right? I hope I get this right, you know? And so that was a pretty clarifying moment for folks in his family as well. So being able to communicate with our loved ones, pretty important. My son, when I talk with my son, my first language is English. And I love that kid, like you can't believe. The sun rises and sets on this little boy. And I have such strong feelings for my son. And sometimes I'll start talking to him in English, because I feel so much, and I feel so greatly to him. Because that's me, that's mine, that's my expressions. I can do it only to a limited measure in Ojibwe, because I haven't reached that high level of proficiency yet, and maybe I never will. I don't know. I know some of those understandings, and I know some of those things, but for him, he talks to me in Ojibwe. When he's got things that matter to him, when he's got things that are really important to him, and you know, you're an 11-year-old, a lot of crazy things are important to you, he talks Ojibwe to me, and it's incredible. So thinking about what is deepest in our hearts, and what language can do, and how you can transmit that through language is really incredible. We always hear this as learners, as people in our community. Our Manidug only understand Ojibwe. Our spirits understand Ojibwe, and we got to know that to move along and to go along and to give our talks. And it's stronger than that. It's when we start to understand Ojibwemo, and when we start to understand our teachings, we understand what that means, and it is way larger than just that statement. Our language was gifted to us. There were no other sounds left when they were giving out, when the big guy was giving out sounds. And because that's the Ojibways. We were the littlest brothers, and we were dawdling, and we were goofing around, and we took a long time to get in line when they were handing out sounds. And we were last in line, and there were no sounds left. All the other animals and birds got their sounds. And so they held a council, and they said, what are we going to do with these poor little human beings? And the Manidug stepped up and said they would share their language with us. That's amazingly powerful. This is amazing. We share our sound with them. When we sound our voices, when we sound our Ojibwe sounds, we can make things happen, because that's how powerful our language is. There are truths that can never be doubted. We make things happen. There are ways that we talk about the world that will make it come to be. That's incredible, to know that and to share that and to have that connection and to understand that that puts me as a participant into the world. That puts me as an ultimate participant. I have responsibility to this world. That's learning our languages. That's pretty incredible. And that's what we have to reawaken in our communities, because for a long time we have not been participants. There were a couple other things that we talked about, that we talk about in here. What do we know? Our Uncle Mason said several years back, my boy doesn't sing anymore. He had this little boy, his little grandchild he was raising, and he sent him off to public school. And there was not a place in the public school for Ojibwe sensibilities. I'll say that. The public school near our reservation is 85 to 90% Ojibwe students, Native students. And within half a year of him sending his little boy there, his little boy stopped singing. Ojibwe people believe that each person has a gift. Each person is gifted with something in their life. And some people are speakers, and some people are singers. Some people are gamblers, they're gifted at gambling. Some people are great hunters. Some people can see things, some people are doctors. That little boy, his whole family, they're singers. And that broke their hearts when they sent this little boy to school. And he had stopped singing. He was making songs when he was just a little tiny boy. And the public schools sucked it out of him. So that was a really, Mason hopped into our Ojibwe language movement about 10 or 12 years ago when this started happening with his grandkids, because he's a first speaker of Ojibwe who lives in our community. And he's been a really helpful, really, really, really great person to have at our backs since then. But that was one of the biggest things when he said, our boy doesn't sing anymore. We have to change this. This was an exercise we did. Again, it's a ridiculously filled up slide, but these are the things, the specificities we get down to. Ojibwemowin was last spoken in my home. In our community, and I don't know how this is for any of you folks, but at our community, there's still a lot of hurt. There's still a lot of, a lot of dreck to get through, and we find that somehow we have to do that. Again, the very specific activities that we get down to with our elicitations are, well, we know pretty much everybody's family stopped speaking Ojibwe at some point. Almost all the families in our Leech Lake communities. But again, to make that personal connection for you, because a lot of people feel really distant. They feel so distanced from Ojibwemowin. A lot of the people in our community, my age and a little bit older, we just feel so far removed from it, and we feel like it's just this unattainable goal. How are we ever going to get there to be able to speak well and to hear it in our community again? So we said to reduce that distance or to recognize it and honor it and move forward, what do we do? And we asked people, how far are you specifically from speaking Ojibwe? And some folks said, my grandma and grandpa spoke it up till, and I said, up till when? 1940, and some folks were able to say, my mom and dad still speak Ojibwe. And we said, great, you've got those resources right at hand. Let's go grab them. But it was a really important thing for people to do and to recognize just how close they were or how far they were from Ojibwemowin. Hey, nagokanokiek, ginawa. It is hard work. But we're all in it together, is what we always remind each other. We say, hey, you're going to work hard, but we're all here. In most cases, it has been decades since Ojibwemowin was a routine activity in our families. We have to take care and be patient with each other. These are the things we do in our community. Again, we all know this. We all know this, but to take it into our communities and to be constantly sending out these messages, these are the things we have to do when we run our schools, when we run our movements. How can we teach more languages to more students at more levels so they're as at home in countries around the world as they are in their own neighborhoods? So this is something that a foreign language teacher in Minnesota had asked and put into a presentation several years back, just talking about world languages in Minnesota. But I really like this statement about how can we teach more languages to more kids so they're at home in other places as much as they are in their home communities. And we kind of turn it around and we think about how do we get people at home in Ojibwemowin again? Or when we come from those families that do support Ojibwemowin, how do we make sure there isn't the competition between Ojibwemowin and English, and how do we make it so that there's not such these divides, these chasms, but that people are comfortable wherever they go. Some more things. What do we think about as we're going along? And let me tell you, every day we get up and we do our work and we go about our lives. We're constantly at this level of focus and we're constantly on, and there's not a moment in our lives, us immersion school workers in the trenches, where we're just hanging out and chilling out and doing nothing and having empty minds. There's always something to focus on. So we always say, what are we thinking about today? Some of the important parts are that Ojibwemowin in strategic functions in the community is going to strengthen our identity. We were told for a long time that it doesn't contribute economically to the community if you talk Ojibwe. You got to talk English. You're not going to be able to get a job. You're not going to be able to work if you talk Ojibwe. And a lot of people took that to heart, and it happened really quickly and they shifted to English. So now we got to reverse that. And we got to take it back and say, you know what, there are places where you can go and make some money as a job by speaking Ojibwe. For instance, our school. There's a few more opportunities coming up as we grow the awareness. Achievement in another language is less likely to be seen as a threat to Ojibwe identity. That's a really important one to present in our community. We have a lot of these border towns at our reservation. Our reservation's like checkerboarded. We own very little land within our boundaries. And we have a lot of interactions with non-Ojibwe folk. Some of them pretty good, some of them pretty negative. That has built up this idea for a long time that achievement in English in the public school is somehow non-Ojibwe. That's another thing we have to turn around in our community. And we're starting to show it through our Ojibwe Language Immersion School. But when we build up our understandings of who we are, and when we build up those deeper understandings of who we are and through our culture and start valuing it, then we understand that success is an Ojibwe value. It is not a threat to us being Ojibwe. Somehow we've taken on these really negative indicators of being Ojibwe. And some other folks in our communities have talked about that, you know, driving Indian cars and eating fry bread and kamades, and you know, that's not all there is. I mean, there is healthy living in our communities too. So understanding deeper and deeper and deeper understandings of who we are through sharing that language is going to bring about more healthy ideas of success in our community and more healthy identifiers of being Ojibwe. And we're seeing it in our kids. Again, this audience, you guys know cognitive benefits of multilingualism. We know kids are more mentally flexible when they learn several languages. They're better able to analyze languages. I like this one. They're better able to make meaning out of something when there's distracting information going on. People do these neurological research studies and stuff, and neuropsychological research studies, and they come up with these things where, you know, kids who are multilingual are better able to make relevant meaning out of something when there's all this distracting stuff going on. Well, man, take that out. Take that out into your community and look at all the distracting stuff that our kids go through. Shoot, look at all the distracting stuff that we go through as adults in a day. How about if we start making some meaningful decisions and some meaningful choices, even though all this stuff's flying at us? That's what multilingualism can do for people. It's pretty cool. Multilinguals are original in verbal expression. Cool. They're creative. And demonstrate a high level of nonverbal intelligence. So there's all that stuff going on in the brain. And then in the heart, there's all this stuff that goes on with people who learn more than one language. So this is cool too. And this is research that's been going on for decades upon decades upon decades. Kids who are multilingual are, like they said, more receptive to nonverbal communication. Cool, you can kind of tell what's going on. Better able to communicate with a wide variety of people, so they're able to go out and talk about our community. They're able to share things in different areas in our community with each other. That's great. Who doesn't want that for their kids? I'll come back to that policy stuff. I don't feel like talking about it right now. So, again with the questions, you know, how are we going to do this? How are we going to bring this back? And it makes our community members answer this. We keep asking the questions and we badger them, and sometimes people like see me coming and they run. They don't want to see me because they know I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to ask them to get specific. But we have these different community forums where we talk about this stuff and we go, you guys, we're the only ones who are going to bring back Ojibwemowin at Leech Lake. Nobody else is going to do this. So come up with the answers. So what's it going to take? Well, very obviously, we need more speakers of Ojibwemowin. So again, it's this great big idea. We need more people to talk Ojibwe. Okay, well, what are we going to do? And this is how we go about it at Leech Lake. What are you going to do? Who's going to learn Ojibwe? Are you? Can you? No? But your cousin can? Okay, bring your cousin in, and let's hear your cousin talk Ojibwe. You know, and we just try to hook people in. And we know that intergenerational learning is going to be critical to what we're doing. So we have to try to get every auntie and uncle out there that we can in with us. Wundami Tawag, that's our kids are, they're being busy, and it's kind of like they're being busy in the role in which they were meant to be. We have a setting in our community now for almost 10 years in which our kids get to do that. It's a school setting. And one of our teachers said this, it was like our kids were on the outside looking in before at our language and culture, but now they're fully a part of it. No longer are we looking in and wondering what's in that Ojibwe world. Our kids just have routinized this into their days. Our kids are now just, this is not an extraordinary thing for them. There is no intent behind our students thinking about being Ojibwe and thinking about how to apply Ojibwe thought, like there is for us as grown-ups. That is one of our greatest markers of success. And what are the things that we talk about? We say, what are Ojibwe markers of success? And we have to bring that back. There's a reclamation. There's a re-identification of Ojibwe ideals. And when we started talking about bringing Ojibwemowin into our school setting, a lot of people said, just translate a curriculum, just translate the state standards. It's not that easy. State standards, ready-made curricula, they don't reflect Ojibwe life. They don't reflect Ojibwe thought. So we try to caution people against mere translations. And what we found is that we have to recover a lot of these ideas for ourselves. What is child development? What is language development? What does social development mean? Can we understand, can we see these kids individually that come into our school? Can we see them and understand their gifts? Can we teach to that? And then we worry about state standards and stuff down the road. We worry about that, which is also a conversation that you have to have in your community if this is a site where you wish to do language reclamation work. How important are state standards? How important is the articulation of your own standards of success? And how does that matter? How does that start to play into public policy? I'll talk about that in a while. But for us, it has been, what does it mean to be Ojibwe in today's world? And we have a lot of conversations about this too. A lot of conversations. These are our planning and our development sessions. How do we make decisions? How do we lead our schools? How have we decided, do we have a board membership? What's their play in this? You know, we have to go through all this, and we have to go back to our elderly members of our community and ask them, or we have to go to our neighbor communities and ask them, hey, you still have a pretty functional ceremonial society. You still have a pretty functional leadership decision-making mechanism. How do you do that? We want to bring that in here. Niigaane Ojibwemowin. So some of the important things that we teach our kids are collective responsibility. These are just kind of giving you a picture of our school. Core values, belonging, family participation in school improvement. When people want to enroll their kids in our school, we go through an interview process with them. It's about an hour and a half long, and it's really personal and nosy. It's not about, hey, what was your kid's, you know, how many numbers and colors could he identify? It's none of that. It's really personal and nosy. It's why we asked whoever's in the family and the kid's life to come in, and we talk for like an hour and a half, man. We say, who are you? What are you doing? Why do you want your child in this school? Why do you want to participate in this school? What kind of ceremonial activities do you participate in? What kind of Ojibwe things do you do? What do you do? And how many hours per month can you be out here in the classroom? If you can't get to the classroom, what can you do to make up for those hours that you can't be out here? What can you send in? Do you have a computer at home? Hey, can you make these things for us? And we leave a lot of room for, what's your kid like? What's he like to eat? Just really ridiculous stuff, but it's getting to know the community members and letting them know that, that this is going to be a long trip and that we're going to be in it together and that we're building those relationships. We do ask for in-kind contributions from the families. We ask for 8 hours a month. And several of our families provide that. Some of them grandmas come out to our classroom, and some of our grandmas in our community now only speak English. They don't even speak Ojibwe. So they come in and they cook lunch for our kids, or they've been sewing some clothing for the girls and the boys, and they just do little things. And even their presence, they don't speak at all because they don't speak Ojibwe, so they come in and they're quiet. But they're doing things in the background. And even just having them around is awesome, because the little kids always want to please a grandma or grandpa, you know? They want to go have hugs from the grandma and grandpa, and they want to show them. So even just having that presence in the school improves behavior, improves motivation, improves attitude. And then some of the grandmas are starting to slowly recall and bring back their own Ojibwemowin. Also, some of our dads in our community haven't felt very included in their kids' lives for a while. We're in northern Minnesota. We always need firewood. It is cold there for a large part of the year. We've had some dads and uncles come in and chop firewood for us, or come in and do that kind of stuff. They were able to go out and cut down the poles that we needed to build our wigwams. So there's a lot of different ways that we show them that they can participate and they start to take ownership. So what is it that we do? What is it that we do? How are we doing? We've had some of our successes. We've retained our students. We keep them in there until 6th grade, and that's a big thing. We don't want our kids to leave before then. We are seeing an increase in the Ojibwemowin proficiency at Leech Lake. We have 34 kids in our school this year. We just graduated out 4 last year. Highly proficient speakers of Ojibwemowin. And now that we've sent those kids out to other schools, we also have partnerships with the schools they've gone to support them with higher level Ojibwe language classes, which puts a little more weight on us as well to follow the kids out to other settings. But we're willing to do that because we don't want to see the kids lose their language. We don't want to see it forgotten. And we also want to set the bar higher for other places in our community. Our students are achieving at and above the level of their English monolingual peers on English language tests of academic achievement. Got to throw that in, people always ask. Our kids are achieving at and above the level of their English monolingual peers. Math and reading assessments, I think there was a year of science assessments as well. Our kids are doing just as well as or better than their peers. And a couple of times a year I gotta do up reports on this, and I gotta do up charts on this. I don't have our current ones done yet. When I go back up to my room this evening, I'll be doing some more of that. Challenges. What are our challenges? Always and ever. Always and ever. We have challenges, we have barriers, and these are the things we talk about, but we don't just sit around and complain. We talk about how are we gonna address this. Teacher training, highly qualified teacher designation in a school setting. Right now we only go through 6th grade because we don't have highly qualified teachers for middle school subject areas. And that has been a considerable challenge for us. We're always looking at our monitor agencies. We have to get waivers for our teachers. We have to do all sorts of crazy semantic wrangling in our job descriptions. to hold our highly proficient speakers of Ojibwe in our educational site. Funding is always a challenge. So we're always hustling for dollars and looking for sustainable funding. It's really rare to find sustainable funding. Parent support, supporting the parents of our kids or the grandparents of our kids. Making sure that folks have resources if they're going to use them for the home, resources for out in the community. You know, we're geographically spread out. Sometimes people are working 2 jobs and they say, I just don't have time to do this, you know, so we always have to look at how are we supporting the families of the kids. A lack of materials and a lack of a literacy description. We have no idea what literacy for school kids looks like in Ojibwemowin. That's a big one. That is a great challenge for us. So a lot of our development projects focus on this, focus a lot on research, but also we're making it as we go along. Our own reflective observations on our kids and our learning year after year. Because like I said, you can't just translate items from English. When we start to get into Ojibwemowin, our words are polysyllabic, our words are huge, and they're just amazingly, amazingly complex. So literacy doesn't look anything like English literacy. There haven't been a lot of studies on that yet. So this is what our teachers dedicate themselves to. And again, always, 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 does our curriculum look Ojibwe? We always have to ask ourselves this, because when we get into it, we're going 100 miles an hour, day after day after day after day, to serve our kids, to serve our families, to make sure that we're getting all of our lessons in, to make sure that we're doing everything. And sometimes it's easy to fall into the trap of, I'm just going to translate something from English and give the kids a lesson. But we have to back it up and say, is there an Ojibwe core to this? Is there an Ojibwe value underlying all this? Is there even just a language task underlying all this? And assessments. We run a school. We have to do assessments. Our assessments are manifold. We have just language acquisition. Are our kids speaking Ojibwe well at an age-appropriate level? So we have to assess the kids on language acquisition. And then we have academic acquisition. Are our kids learning reading and math and writing? Are our kids learning art and science? So we got to do assessments on that. Then later, we say, are they doing as well as their monolingual peers? Well, how do we do that? Then we got to do it in English. So always, we have all these assessments and accountability things that we got to think about. And we say, again, how does that look from an Ojibwe point of view? Whoa, that's been a long time since folks in our community thought about that. So we do exercises to talk about what does success look like for Ojibwe communities. And we design our site to start looking like that. It looks a lot different from an English school, and it makes people really uncomfortable for a while. People aren't really ready for this. It's kind of hard to explain to folks. And so then we go back to, hey, we need some funding to run this place. And we got to have some kind of accountability measure and some kind of something to measure. It's a really complex management thing to go through. And yet it makes sense to us because we're Ojibwe people and we're defining this for ourselves. We talk about products, practice, and perspective. What does it mean? Again, just all of these specific items. There are ways to integrate Ojibwe life and Ojibwe language across a curriculum, across any sort of learning area. We talk about this. We talk about products, the things we use. They're readily available. They're easily integrated into classrooms. I see this all over Ojibwe country. You know, you can have birchbark baskets sitting all around your classroom. It's cool. So there's a product. And there are quite a few practices, again, across Ojibwe country, within immersion and within foreign language classrooms. Practices, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of Ojibwes in our community who still live their lives as Ojibwe. They're still making rice, they're still making sugar, they're still making their baskets, but a lot of these are doing it all in English. A lot of these folks who are doing these practices have lost the language, and they've lost the meaning and the connection to those items. Now it is just a practice. And then the perspective. We got to make sure at our site, and this is the best that we can do for ourselves in Pisakagosha, that we are honoring the Ojibwe perspective, the most deepest understanding, that connection to those barks, that connection to that rice, that connection to those trees. If we're going to be doing that at our site with our kids, then we have to ensure that we're honoring those teachings and that connection, and it takes our language to do that. Hundami tawag, you know us, I go, hundami tawag, our kids. We do this all for our kids. We do this all for our students at our site. And this is them, just being them. This is them. The benefit that our kids get is they get to live like Ojibwe people. When we started, we came up with a mission statement. And some of the organizations that come to us for advice say, hey, we're trying to make this mission statement and we're trying to translate it, and can we say this, and can we say we want to honor this, and can we say that? And we say, man, you could, but don't. You have to think like an Ojibwe person. It's got to come from there first, you know? And we were lucky enough, we were fortunate enough in our planners, with our planners, to have first speakers on our planning committee, and who said, well, this is how it's going to go. And our goal, our entire goal at our Niigane school site, that's our whole goal at Niigane. And we're going to give our kids the best that we have as Ojibwe people, so that they'll carry it forward everywhere they go in their lives. It's the best translation I can give you. I understand it. Our uncles said that for us, and I get it, and I gave you the best translation I could. It's kind of flat. But that is what runs us. Every day we think of that, and we have that posted around our school. Oh, darn it, these are hard to see. This is us. So it took all of these questions, and it takes constant review and reflection on a lot of these questions to get here is where we are. We have kindergarten through 6th grade. We have 3 teaching teams. Our teaching teams are a younger person, a second language learner, who is paired with a first speaker of Ojibwe from our communities. And it's incredible. This is our parents, this is the family members of our students, helping to make rice. They're there at planning committee meetings. I think that one was, they were talking about like the lunch menus coming up, or who was going to be cooking lunch for, you know, 1 month of school, things like that. Hey, our oldsters. I love these guys. And we couldn't do any of this without them. At Leech Lake, we are down to maybe 80 first speakers of Ojibwe in our community. We've got about 80. And a majority of them are not language positive supporters in our community. There are a couple hands full who are willing to help out and who see the value in Ojibwemowin. So we're getting down there. But we couldn't do any of this without the oldsters of our community. They're the coolest. Mama we go ni no end and ani be me do me na kinagoge go ipiten muad and shinabek. So it takes everyone. That's our message to get across. It takes all these different parts of the community. There's some of our kids on a recent school day. They're awesome. I'm trying to think, but I've been going on for a long time, and I think I've got to wrap up now. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask now. Sorry, there's just so much. There's so much to cover. I could go on and on and on for hours with you guys. And if any of you would like to come and visit at any time, email me, and you're always welcome. Our kids do really great with visitors. And I could seriously go on and on and on all day with experiences from our school, but I know there's other folks who have to speak too.
I'm going to bring the mic around, so you don't have to run.
Thank you for telling us your story. I wanted to know whether you feel any pressure from the state to influence your curriculum. I know you mentioned how you cannot or you do not want to translate state standards.
That's a good question. For the first few years, you know, I told you we have 35 kids in our school, and they're kindergarten through 6th. For the first few years, we were really under the radar of the state. And we were working on a lot of that BICS language for the kids, you know, basic interpersonal communication skills and a lot of the social skills. And we hadn't got to these really tough, focused academic areas. So we cruised along. And then in the last 4 or 5 years, we've come up on English language accountability. We still, with our small numbers, haven't received a lot of pressure from the state because our numbers are small at this point. But we get pushback actually from our local decision makers, from our school site decision makers, from our school site school boards, who are a little worried about our kids' numbers, bringing test scores down, and we've actually showed them we brought their test scores up. The inclusion of our kids, where you have 20 kids in a class and 2 kids' test results can totally throw off, can totally change percentages. So not quite yet at the state level. It's more the local decision-making level that's given us the pushback. We're still under the radar a little bit, but now they're videotaping this, and it might go out on the interwebs, and who knows? Now people are going to hear about Niigane, start looking at us closer.
Question over here.
Leslie, how do you interact with the other Anishinaabe communities in your area and then throughout the bigger, throughout Ontario? I mean, there's dozens and dozens of communities.
What? There's other Ojibwe communities? I thought we were the heart of the nation. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding. Anishago and Dickin. We have deep and abiding connections with members in our other communities. We have a lot of relatives throughout Anishinaabe country, and we have a hard time connecting with other folks when we start working in immersion, because we're working 12 and 16 hours a day on school items. Just, you know, what are we going to do for this upcoming week? Do we have all of our lessons made? Do we have all of these things made? I have to go do home visits on these families. This family's having trouble with this, so we got to go do this. This family's holding a ceremony, so we got to go participate in it. It leaves us very, very, very little time to communicate with those outside of our community. We try to share items like electronically. We've got another school in Wisconsin, the Wadukudaring School in Hayward, Wisconsin, is a preschool through 5th grade Ojibwe Language Immersion School. So we've had different projects where we've shared some materials, and we just said, go ahead, adapt it to your local dialect, and that's been really successful. And other than that, we try to grab moments where we can, but it usually comes at things like a conference like this. Yeah. We work with some of the local colleges, because we have a handful of colleges right in our area who teach Ojibwemowin. So we're starting to work with them more and more to say, you gotta teach more rigorous courses in Ojibwe, and you have to take people farther and farther and farther to get their proficiency higher. And so we kind of supply maybe word lists or topic lists, things that they can talk about that are relevant, again, in the community. And we have had a lot of the students from the local colleges are now coming into our site to have practical experiences with language. So that's been cool, getting more and more younger folks who are interested.
Question here.
Thank you so much for your beautiful and heartfelt presentation. It was so powerful to hear all of the stories and all the successes that you've been able to achieve in your community. I especially like the story about the singer and how going to the public school just sucked the songs out of him. So my question to you is, you said that funding is an issue, and I'm just curious where you do get your funding from, and if the tribe contributes. I know there's a community college up there. Is it Leech Lake Community College? Are they involved in supporting you at all? Just in general, what do you do about getting your funding for your work and your school?
Okay. Like I was saying before, local decision makers have a hand in how this is going to go. Our tribe, the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, our tribal government, supports us at a level that they can. They give us about 25% of our yearly operating budget. Yay, Leech Lake Band. And then we have private foundation funding, and we have public funding. The Grotto Foundation has been a great supporter of ours for several years. They have been just awesome in helping us to understand our setting, helping us to help define our goals, helping us to be there to build capacity. I really appreciate their Native Language Revitalization Initiative. We received an Esther Martinez Initiative Award through ANA this year. So that's 3 years of funding, which helps, knowing we've got 3 years of funding there. And that's covering some of our teachers and some articulation projects that we're working on. The Blinded Foundation, another private foundation in Minnesota, has been a supporter of ours in the past. What other private foundations? That's where we're at right now. I forgot to tell you in my presentation, Niigane is hosted by the Niigane K-12 tribal school. It's a BIE school, which is chartered by the band. So there are some public sources of funding for which we are not eligible because it almost looks like we're competing with other divisions within our reservation. Some of these places you can only have one source of funding. So looking at our tribe's strategic plan, you know, where does language revitalization fit into the strategic plan? We got to go to those meetings quarterly and check in and show our faces and say, you know, everybody puts their cards on the table and says what public funding sources are your divisions applying for and which ones are you getting. And we do some trading and some deal making to see who's going to fit in where. Yeah.
My name is Paul Williams Jr. I'm a language instructor for children through preschool through high school in Beaver, Alaska. And my question is that we know as adults that the importance of our native language is very important, and we learn our native language and English, and we have a balance, and we know the importance to teach the children their native language so that they'll know their identity, and they'll have that high esteem of who they are. But my question is, a lot of the youth today, I see it in my own classroom that they have other interests. They don't have too much interest in learning their native language. And how could we bring them to learn more of their native language? Because we know it's very important, and I try to teach them as much as I could, but they got to do their part and learn as much as they can. And what are some of the ways that you have taught your students to learn more of their native language? Masi.
I have to say this carefully. Well, our kids don't have a choice. I gotta be careful when saying things like our kids don't have a choice. But we're the grown-ups, we're the moms and dads. We do get to make some decisions for them for a while. At our school, all content is in Ojibwemowin. So when their families make a choice to send them to the school, there is no other language of function at our school site. They do go out to an English language arts class in the later years. They go to a FIAD class with the host school where they speak English. But at our site, there's not a choice. So that means the language is important. The language is necessary. The language is valued, but it's necessary. We talk about that, like language and the power functions and the necessity of language for communication. There's a point in our school where when the kids talk to us in English, we don't respond. It then becomes a critical necessity for them to speak Ojibwe with each other. But it's not, it's not punitive. It's, we do a lot of games, we do a lot of social building, we do a lot of community building within our schools. And when that's the language of transaction, that's what it becomes. So they're engaged. We're able to do that at our site. Can we do it with the kids outside of there? That's been a big challenge. When we hear the kids out in other places, that's a big challenge. We hear them talking English. So then we take it out in the community, and we're doing activities in the community with folks, also to support it.
Good morning. The question I had is, we are in the process, the planning process of starting our own little school in Wisconsin. And we've been debating back and forth between immersion or a bilingual situation, because what our concern is your students that leave at 6th grade, how are they, if they do go into a public school, able to deal with all of those, the English side that they need to, that foundational material that they already need to have. What happens with that, and how have you dealt with that? We have, we've graduated one class of kids into English schools. And we give our kids, we start our kids on English language arts at 3rd grade. They get a period over in the whole school. In 4th and 5th grade, they get 2 periods of language arts, English language arts. We help out the parents. We have suggested in the past, if there are opportunities, our host school gives tutoring, after-school tutoring opportunities to some students. In English language, on math and reading. We've suggested that if parents want to help out with that, they can send them to the after-school activities. Also, there's a gifted and talented program at our host school, which we participate in, and we got to write up all the items for it. And if we want to nominate the kids for G&T in Ojibwe, then we become the teachers. There's that availability. But there's this whole cognitive transfer. When the kids build up those abilities in one language, they're going to transfer over to any other languages that they learn in the future. And It's what the research is telling us. And we're talking about research from, 1930s, 1940s onward. It's consistently telling us that. So, we're believing in it, we're seeing it. A lot of times with our kids, we don't teach them any English, any Niigaane skills. We're teaching them Ojibwemowin reading and writing in the first few years. And we've seen a lot of kids who are just spontaneously reading in English as well by first, second grade. I mean, that's without any instruction on our part. So, we've kind of been keeping an eye on that so we can tell the community folks, because nobody knows what this is going to look like yet. This hasn't ever been done in any of our communities. So we're trying to keep an eye on that stuff too, so we can kind of tell the community these are the trends we're going to see in acquisition. And we see our kids, our general ed kids who are cruising along, they're making those transfers. Like I said, we are seeing that they're achieving at and above the levels of their English monolingual peers from 3rd through 6th grade. So we're doing comparison studies, English, Ojibwe, acquisition, and achievement levels. We're seeing it. And ours is total immersion. And it's hard to sustain that. And it's hard to get the teachers who are highly proficient enough to teach all the content level. But it's working. And it's working at Wadukudading schools in Hayward, Wisconsin as well. Their kids are succeeding in the English language acquisition tests of math and reading. Their kids as well are performing at and above the level of English monolingual peers. And they're 10 years into this, 10 years into it. They just started their preschool effort this year again. So prior to that, they had kindergarten through 5th grade. So you might want to check in there too.
Absolutely, thank you.
My name is Ramaka Eneges, and I'm from the Lummi Nation in Northwest Washington. My question to you is, how would you describe the community buy-in to the program that you've developed?
We were the crazies for a while. We were the crazies with the cute little Ojibwe class. It's been a really tough road because we asked so many questions. Like I said, we asked the questions, and we're encouraging people to identify that in themselves as active participants. That's a tough one. So for the first few years, we just had a couple of hands full of students, and a lot of families who say, "What? The kids aren't learning English, they're never going to get into college," and we're saying, "Great, I'm glad you're thinking of college for your kids. Actually, we can help." Community buy-in is difficult because it's so much work. It's so hard to learn Ojibwe, So we got to make things fun, and we do a lot of education. Like I said, breaking down these things like cognitive benefits of multilingualism. Going out into the community and doing presentations. Always have food there. We pay Grandma to make biscuits and make some soup, and it's awesome. And then we start talking about the cognitive benefits of multilingualism. We break it down, and we talk about it, and we say, how can we do this here with you guys? How can we do this with you guys and your kids? And those are the things we do. Active community building. And a lot of people don't feel like they can be participants in this. We've had a lot of years. We've had a lot of years of prescriptive decision-making. So it's a lot of opening up people's hearts and building courage. We talk about it. We talk about, we've been working without a net. We work without a net in Ojibwe language immersion because it's never been done before. And then we got to spread that out into the community, and say, this can be done. We'll be your safety net to get you into working with Ojibwemowin. It's slowly building. We're starting to hear it more in the community. And like I told Jerry, we're getting more and more college students who want to come in and be there because they know that this is a place where they can hear sustained and higher levels of Ojibwe language, and we're kind of helping them set goals at local colleges. So it's coming, it's coming. And then too, I kind of complain about, you know, taking English language tests and talking about the irrelevancy of English language, math, and reading tests when our kids aren't even educated in English. But being able to show the community how our kids are doing in comparison with the same kids of the community, the same population of students that we are achieving at the same level, sometimes above, you know, that's helped to build the community support too.
This will be the last question.
Yeah, Dad, good morning. My name is Maggie Benali, and I worked many years in the immersion school, and I recently retired from the school I worked at. Now I'm helping 2 schools start the immersion, and which is exciting. I think they are excited to get started for next school year. My question to you as a consultant, and I think this is one of the issues in many of our schools today, especially within the public schools. The schools want to have Navajo language and culture program, language, and they also want to start immersion within a school, and which will become strands. So, you know, maybe there's 1 or 2 classrooms of immersion, but the rest of the school is still, you know, on a regular English language curriculum. And my question or recommendation is, you know, how would you approach that as a first-year school, the support from the schools? Because, you know, I will not be in I'm not from the community. I will just be working with schools in those areas, and I think that's one of the questions they have is, you know, what is the support? Well, how will they get the support from that school with, you know, maybe just 2 or 3, you know, classes of immersion?
Are you talking content area classes across like 1 grade, or do you mean there's going to be several grades that are
eventually
transitioning to immersion?
Several grades. I think what they want to do is just continue the regular classes in the school, but have they will be adding a grade each school year, so that eventually they would like to go up to 5th grade, 6th grade, maybe years later up to middle school, but stay within the school site. You know, they will not be moving to another, you know, school as immersion school.
Okay. So they want to start with like a cohort of students and take them through, and then they'll build another one?
Yes.
Do it. What's your question? No, I'm just kidding.
I think that's, you know, they're kind of leery of it, and they wonder what's going to happen. You know, how will they be treated? You know, by other colleagues. You know, I think that's, you know, one of the concerns they have.
Heck with them. Heck with them. Somebody's got to do it, Maggie. Somebody's got to do it. Yeah, let's visit. Somebody's got to do it though, and it can be done.
It's time.
Wait, you know what?
Round of applause, please, for Leslie Harper.